name is Irene Sankoff. Today is July 12, 2018, and I'm interviewing David Hein in Gander, Newfoundland.
Hello.
Hi, thank you so much for meeting with us.
My pleasure.
You mentioned in interviews your and Irene's ongoing debate about whether theatre could change the world. So what do you think now after seeing the influence of both of your musicals on people?
Well, so our first musical was called My Mother's Lesbian Jewish Wiccan Wedding. It was a true story about my mom, how she came out to me, how she discovered her sexuality and rediscovered her religion. And we initially thought it was stories about my family. It was just these stories we always had. And as we told them to our friends, people said, you have to put that in a show, that has to be in a show in some way. But we still didn't realize until we started doing the show, we were still just telling funny, touching stories about our family that people seemed to respond to. It wasn't until we started to really get some sense of response from people where they said, there was a woman who waited outside the theater who said, I'm 70 years old and I'm Jewish and my granddaughter is about to marry another woman and I wasn't okay with it and now I am. And it wasn't okay until we started hearing stories like that we realized this is actually, it's important to tell our stories, and often it can be important just to tell for example, it's a story of my mom coming out to me, a positive coming out story. Just putting that out there and representing that that's a possibility for people can be an incredibly profound thing, and can represent to them. If you say this is a true story, this really happened, that means a lot to people. It resonates with them somehow. And Come From Away certainly has been that same experience. We're telling hundreds of stories instead of just my mom's story. But time and again, people tell us how important it is to them. They tell us that it makes them want to change and to be better people, and they remember that people can be kind. It gives them hope, I don't think that in itself changes the world, but I think it's one piece, it's one drop in the waterfall that hopefully will.
And what are the challenges of writing about real people who are still alive?
It's an equal part challenge and it's an equal part wonderful experience. We always talk about as writers how our experience goes far beyond just, first of all, you interview them like you're doing, and then you have to transcribe them like you're going to do, which is a lot of work. But it's also this amazing gift in that you come away with specific language from each person, from each character, which represents where they're from, the way they use different words, the accents that they use. So you get that gift, and you get their unique perspectives. But then what's been really wonderful about Come From Away, obviously I've maintained, with our first musical, I've maintained my relationship with my mother going forward, but we've become friends with everyone that we interviewed, and so every time we have an opening or Come From Away, it becomes a family reunion, and people reunite. They constantly comment online and write to us. And I don't know what other writers get the characters in their play, constantly writing to them and cheering them on, and it's a responsibility because we really wanted to get it right, and we've been encouraged all the way along to push the play into fiction and to sensationalize it or change it so it was a different story. And our goal all along was to get it right for the people that we interviewed, so that they would come to the show and say, that was our experience. And so that's been our goal along, and that's a responsibility, but it's such a joy when you get it right for everyone, especially when you bring it back here to Gander, and everyone, the whole community says that's what happened. It's life-changing, it's amazing.
Is it more difficult to write about your own mother or this community?
Oh, that's an interesting question. With my mom, when we first started, we were just doing a fringe show so that my wife and I could hang out with each other and really see each other. And we barely expected that my mom would even see it when we started writing it, much less that her friends would see it, much less that people all over North America would end up seeing it. So I think we went in, somewhat naive, and there was, this sense of, we have to get it right, we have to get it right. We were just having fun and spending time together. With Come From Away, I think, we came back from here after the 10th anniversary when we interviewed everyone, and we really felt this level of weight on our shoulders that we really wanted to get it right. We wanted to get the details right. We wanted to get everything perfect. And at the same time, we knew that we couldn't. We would have to amalgamate characters. We would have to combine stories, and we We would have to change things, change details, but maintain the true spirit of what happened. And so I think Come From Away was a larger challenge, partly because it's a broader story, but also I think the more we do, the more we learn. I don't know if we would have done Come From Away if we knew that it was 6 years of constant changes and constant, it was a lot of work.
And how much control do you have over production of your work? And did it change going from Fringe Festival in Toronto to Broadway?
Yeah, quite a bit. But you still, there's more people working on it, but you still are just as involved, if not more so. When we did the Fringe Festival, I did the graphic design for all the posters, we did the laundry for all the actors, we produced it and wrote it and edited it. So you're doing everything. And you'd think that, when you get to Broadway or all along the path to Broadway, that you're just being a writer, that they would make it significantly easier. But if anything, it was, the expectation was that we would keep chasing perfection and chasing making the story better, trying to constantly solve problems and make it stronger and stronger and stronger, up until up all night trying to solve problems for the next day of rehearsal. And so there's a commitment, no matter what you're doing, to just throw your whole self in.
You mentioned in interviews that you had a difficult time making second production of your first musical because it was too big to be an alternative Canadian show, but not big enough to be a major box office hit musical.
Yeah, it was interesting. We started off with in the Fringe production we had 7 people in the cast and a 4-person band. When the Mirvishes picked it up, they said, "What do you want?" And we said, maybe 3 more people. Let's make it a big thing. Let's add another musician. And we ended up with this cast of 10 and a 5-person band, and that was much too big for most theaters to be able to do. And so that took a while for us to learn. It was certainly too big for Canadian theaters to do. And what we had to do was learn that we could scale it back down to 7, that we could stretch it and expand it, and also that a lot of regional theaters in the United States can do productions that big, and we're excited about doing it. So it was a learning process along the way. And at the same time, we were starting Come From Away with a cast of 14, and we thought, no one is ever going to do this. This is way too expensive, and how are we ever going to get this done? We weren't sure that it ever would be done. We talked about how we thought high school students would be forced to do it because it was Canadian content and there was lots of roles for every kid to do. So we're thrilled that it's being told all over the place. And by most Broadway production standards, it's remarkably low cost. It's 12 chairs on a stage and 12 actors, and it's there's a lot of small pieces, but it is not helicopters and chandeliers.
And now you're going to make a movie.
We are. We're in the middle of planning it right now. We've written the first draft of the screenplay, and
this is like translating it to a big screen.
It's wonderful to some degree. So Irene has a screenwriting degree, and I've studied screenwriting. So I think when we were writing Come From Away, we obviously we often thought that we imagined what it might have been like. We tried to imagine what 38 planes would look like. We actually looked at pictures of countless buses driving into the darkness, or people sleeping across the floors in a gym, and people from all around the world walking through the streets. But you can't convey that on stage. We try our best, and our director and our cast do amazing magic on stage. But until you put it on film, you can't actually see those events. So part of that's really exciting, and at the same time, there's a lot of challenges. The magic of the theater allows you to transition in time in a way that a realistic film doesn't work as well. So it's fun to play in a different medium and just tell the story in a different way.
And how do you find the balance between artistic integrity and commercial viability? I always wonder, how do you struggle with it, or?
We have been really fortunate that we've always done the shows that we've wanted to do, and we have wonderful producers and collaborators and directors and choreographers and musical directors that have never encouraged us to, I'll give you an example. When we started the show, we had an intermission in it because we thought we ought to have an intermission. That's what Broadway shows did. That's what musicals did. We weren't even trying to be a Broadway show. And along the way, our producers said, I don't think you should have an intermission. The people who arrived in Gander spent 5 days there. They didn't stop in the middle and go and get drinks and talk about how it was going, and decide whether they wanted to leave or not. They went through it, and the audience needs to come with us on that journey. And the commercial answer would have been definitely have an intermission. We can sell more drinks, we can sell more merchandise, we can make more money, and that was not their goal at all. It was telling the story in the right way, and so we've been really blessed to have the right collaborators.
And what do you think is the biggest misconception of the general public of the work you do as a songwriter and playwright?
Well, I have no idea. I don't know. I think there's a sense of overnight success that the sense of, can you believe it just happened? On one hand, every single day we're surprised by what's happening with this, and we're constantly honored and amazed and wake up smiling and feel so blessed to have had this happen, and are surprised when Justin Trudeau drops by our theatre, or the Clintons come to our theatre, or we do a benefit. We did the benefit the other day for a Daffodil place in St. John's, and we raised $50,000 to support cancer, people struggling with cancer here in Newfoundland, and that's amazing that we can use this show to help people. And at the same time, it is an incredibly long process. So the sense of it goes from well, we're working with Broadway producers, and then 3 months after that, well, now we have a Broadway director, but all of them are saying this probably won't go to Broadway. And then 6 months later, they say, well, maybe we're going to talk about it, but don't get your hopes up. And then 8 months later, they say, we want to take it to Broadway, but it depends if we can even get a theater, so it may not happen. And then a year later, they say, we are going to Broadway, but we have no idea what theater, and you don't believe them because it's taken so long at that point, and you're like, maybe something's still going to happen. So the sense of overnight, like you go from writing it to immediately goes up on Broadway, it's an incredibly long process, and I think often people think it happens overnight, and it's a lot of work, and it involves a lot of collaboration. It's a whole team working on it every single day for 6 years.
Is there anything you wish you knew before you started this career?
That it would take 6 years to do this. No, I mean it's been wonderful that it's been so surprising. I think it would have been daunting to know how much work actually goes into it, and so I think I wouldn't have wanted to know that. I might have wanted to know how wonderful it's been, because there certainly are times when you're banging your head against the wall thinking, how are we going to solve this, and is this going to be good, and is this worth it, and to know that we've been able to do something that we love and make the world hopefully a little bit better is a wonderful thing to start to feel as you're growing a show.
Is there anything you would like to talk about? You give lots of interviews, but is there anything no one asks about and you really want to discuss it?
I don't know. There's lots of stuff I love talking about. I love talking about working with my wife. There's something very wonderful about collaborating with people that's very much like a marriage, and I think we've learned a lot about conflict resolution and dispute management, but at the same time finding people who you love that at the end of the day are going to support you and want the best for you, and are also going to be brutally honest with you is an amazing thing. The thing that we try to tell all the time about this story is how it's changed us and how we've learned to teach our daughter to be kind and to try to be kind every day. We've learned that kindness is this innate thing in us. We can reach out to anyone, and regardless of whether they're a stranger, you can just go in with the assumption that they are another human being, and that our role is to help each other. And if you go into that assumption, that's an easy assumption to make. You just go into everything with that, and that feels like you can change the world. And we don't have to respond to tragedies with anger. We can respond with kindness. We can respond by seeing the majority of helpers. There's far more people helping in times of crisis than there are making the crisis, and we can be one of those helpers ourselves. And then we don't have to respond just to tragedies that way. We can also respond every day with kindness, and that's what we try to talk about, because that's what we've learned, and it's inspired us in the show.
Is there any advice you can give to an aspiring playwright or songwriter?
Oh, there's lots of advice. Do something you love, because it's going to take at least 6 years if you're doing a musical. Never stop working on it until many other people on your team tell you to stop working on it, because it can always get better. And do something that's going to inspire you rather than something that you think will inspire other people, you think other people will want. Do something that you want to make. That's what's been good for us, because it's like a marriage. You are going to live with it for a long time, and you should know that this is something that's going to fuel you and keep you going and drive you to make it better constantly.
And what's your definition of success or failure?
Oh, that's really hard. I feel like I succeeded every time someone who we interviewed said, "You got it right." I feel like we've succeeded when two strangers in the audience have the same experience that we've translated, that we had when we came out to Newfoundland, that we cried and that we laughed and that it made us want to be better people, and they turn to each other and they hug each other and share Kleenexes, and I feel like we've succeeded when little girls come dressed as Captain Beverly Bass, and we see them being inspired in the same way we have. And I mean, failure is sort of the opposite. When you feel like you're not translating an idea correctly, when you know in your heart that lyric isn't as strong as it could be, and you should still be working on it. And sometimes you just have to live with that for a little while and recognize that what's great about failure is that I've learned along the way, because I started out very much putting something on paper and thinking this is great. And what I've learned is, if you put 5 things on paper, if you write 10 songs and know that most of them aren't going to work, but they're explorations, and some of them will take you in a conversation farther. Failing is a stepping stone that gets you to success. Failing is, you always learn by failure, and it's if you don't fail, you will not have as good a final product, because it teaches you where you want to go.
All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Was that useful?
Very.
Yeah, good. I'm glad.
So, yeah.
Feel free to follow up if you have any other questions.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no
I really
problem.
appreciate it.